What is up, YouTube? Today we're back with a balanced patch preview review of the update. This is the biggest patch that Epic 7, I would say, is probably ever going to receive. I can't recall a time where I have been more excited for a balanced update. And hopefully you guys will agree with me because there is so much to unpack here. So don't go anywhere. And obviously, as always, please drop a like, comment for the algorithm, subscribe if you haven't already, and let's get right into it. Now, let's start off with the heroes that are actually going to be receiving buffs. I can't believe my eyes right now, but top model Luluca actually got a buff. Shout out to Alvin in chat because he said TML buff, TML buff. Well, it actually happened. Lone Crescent, Bellona, Charlotte, Tori, Robin, Kisei, Diene, Lethe, Birgitta, Zeno, Vildred. Sorry, let me stop right there. Zeno is playable in 2026. Can you believe that? I honestly can't. Vildred, Unbound Knight Arowell, and then, the SC Roozid, Assassin's Pledge, which is Robin's artifact, Tyrant's Descent, which is Kane's artifact, and a bunch of changes to the overall effects in the game for crit damage buff, escort, bleed, burn, and curse in terms of debuffs. Now, memory imprints also got changed. So, you know how, like, when you're building a character and they have 16.8% crit, and, well, you're not going to have that issue anymore. So you don't have 99.8% crit, which is finally, we've been waiting so long for this to be updated. So let's start with the heroes. Now, top model Luluca, one of the main issues that she's been having is she just doesn't do enough damage, right? When you need to have a character that's twice the speed of the target, it's kind of hard to build, right? So now she's going to increase her damage because she gets a speed buff on S2. And that's going to allow her to get more damage because she's one of the characters that actually uses MCDS. Now, if you're someone that's not familiar with Fribbles, MCD is basically attack multiplied by crit damage. So it's like, basically, if you want to get 12k MCD, 4k attack, 300 crit damage. There are certain characters, like top model Luluca, like Vildred, like Kisei, I believe, where it also has some scaling that's mixed in with their total speed. So having her get a speed buff is going to be quite significant. As you can see here, increases combat readiness of 20%. Awaken is going to give her the increased speed. So it's going to help her actually be built to get more damage from that speed buff. And the penetration is going to go up from 50 up to 100%, which is very significant because now you have a way easier time of killing a Runka. I don't know about you, but if you've ever picked top model Luluca and you try to like soul burn S3 into a Barunka and they're POV 35k HP and they just don't die. And it's like, why, right? So we're not going to see that issue anymore. Some of the most popular kind of, supporters or synergies that you're going to see with TML is most likely going to be C Phantom Politis. So obviously a character that we're going to want to test to try to kill off this revive meta as we're currently in. Lone Crescent Bellona is going to have a huge change. First thing I want to point out is she will have evasion for every surviving ally, which means she has 60% evasion in her kit. And why is that important? Well, we also have Repost set. So that's going to be another option for you to build Bellona because she does have the built-in injury on her kit now on the S1 and also on the S3. Now, one thing I don't like is that she is decreasing the damage dealt on the S3 and she cannot give vigor for the whole team anymore. But overall, I think this is, a pretty, interesting change to say the least. Having the evasion there and also having increased damage dealt on S2. So if anyone early picks Bellion into you, for example, and maybe they have like Yulha Bellion or they have like an LRK or something, Lone Crescent Bellona can kind of fill that slot when there's a lot of AoE coming in. You're able to generate that fighting spirit really quickly. Then you're going to have really good value with that built-in injury. So you put the game on a timer, right? Now, looking over at Charlotte, she is now going to have increased damage dealt by 50% and damage reduction with 50%. So that means, every time you hit her, she gets an attack buff, defense buff. So overall, I think it just helps her with durability and survivability. That's probably the same thing, but whatever. She's going to be able to just be more usable, but I don't think from like an RTA perspective, we're really going to see her get picked very often. I think it's a really unique change where you increase the defense of the target or you penetrate defense of the target with the highest defense. I think that is cool, but outside of maybe Harsetti matchups, I don't think Charlotte is going to be used that much still, right? They did increase the amount of fighting spirit that you gain because it gets doubled now, but I still don't think Charlotte is going to see a lot of play because the meta right now is just very, very high tempo, a lot of Sigurd, a lot of speed buff, a lot of Yulha, a lot of Renac, a lot of C Fandom, Briar, and even in stall matches, Charlotte's just not going to be able to do enough, unfortunately, right? So I think that she's going to be reserved as a pocket pick for maybe Harsetti matchups from an RTA standpoint. Looking over into the EE, I do want to say that she does have built-in lifesteal now. Looking at Tori, her cascade cooldown is going to go from 2 down to 1, so overall it's going to help her have more consistency. Because sometimes when you don't proc that cascade and you have to, wait the rotation, a lot of the people that played the Payra Tori Aros meta, which was like maybe, 4 or 5 seasons ago, you'll know that when you don't proc cascade, it's really annoying because like when it's not on the right rotation, it just messes up your damage and you might miss kill. And usually Tori is really good into like single target comps. So I can see what they're doing here with the increased hit chance. So if people are playing that single carry Satsuka kind of thing, you can kind of get that S3 and then just Soulburn S1 and just kind of hit. And the Tori's going to be able to kill with the Cascade, and also you get the hit chance versus Satsuka, which is very, very good. So I'm very pleased to see that they're, putting units and changing units in mind to try to address the Satsuka issues that, a lot of the, lower elo and just overall people have against Satsuka. Now, Robin, one major change is just the Soulburn, right? They're not really changing her kit overall. It's just the Soulburn goes from 20 down to 10, and we'll talk about exactly why that is beneficial for her, because there's going to be a change to Assassin's Pledge, which is also her specific artifact. So we'll talk about that in a little bit once we get to the artifact portion of the video. So Kisei is going to have her damage increased. I can't believe it. I cannot believe it. Kisei, Blue Kisei, shout out to my boy Xerxes, got buffed. I can't believe it. So if you've ever lived to see Aimant Kisei S3, S2 with Swift Boots, yeah, this is going to do even more damage. This is going to do even more damage. So maybe when she's back in Guild War, I'm going to have to do a Kisei debut. I'm going to have to do a Guild War debut for all of these characters, goddammit. I mean, I'm excited. Diene. I think Diene might be the winner of the patch, guys. I'm going to be honest. I'm going to be completely honest. She now has a 15% combat readiness increase on the S2. She also has increased defense for the whole team. So right now she gets crit res, right? That's going to be changed over to defense, and you're still going to have the penetration resistance. So she'll still be used in cases where you need pen res if the Ilonap is taken, or if you're going to be playing against C-Phantom Politis and they pick like a Janua or something, then Diene is going to be there so that you're able to kind of push up, put up that pen res, and then you're kind of good to go from that spot, right? Now, her constellation is going to be changed over from Gemini over to a Taurus. So the Taurus is going to be Lady of the Scales. If you want to look at the base stat, Lady of the Scales is 117 base. Now, Diene currently does have a 10 speed EE. So what does that mean? That means she'll be 127 base speed. Let me just say that again. She is 127 base speed. Let me just turn my camera on for this. She is 127 base speed. If you ever played in Season 2, when there was the Soul Weaver Frenzy meta, where Soul Weavers got extra speed, we're going to see Diene potentially be an opener in E7 Masters, and even like next season. So Aimant is going to be really, really strong. Sorry, not Aimant. Diene is going to be really strong in that regard. And I'm very curious to see like what people are going to do, because, if you kind of fall asleep in the draft, Diene can just outspeed you, and then you just kind of get cooked. Right. I will say that if you're someone that isn't really, really fast and you're playing Diene as like a primary answer into like C-Phantom Politis and putting up Penres and stuff, then it makes building her even easier because you don't have to invest like really, really high quality like speed pieces to hit that threshold, to hit that benchmark with the Soul Constellation push, right? But right now, she can be used as an opener, which is very interesting. Now, Lethe also has a huge change, okay? Call of the Abyss damage dealt decrease, which means like the cinematic attack, right? The animation, that attack is going to be decreased in terms of damage. We'll have to see what the numbers actually look like to see if it's actually really impactful, but I'll withhold judgment. Increase health by 10%, which means building her is even going to be easier. And one major change about this. Right now, her Omen stacks cannot be activated by counters, dual attacks, or extra attacks. After the balance update, you can build Lethe on counter set. You can tune it where C-Phantom Politis dual attacks with Lethe. You can use Witch of the Mere Tenebria to dual attack with Lethe. A lot of different options, but you can even have her on counter set. So this is going to be really interesting, right? We're going to see maybe potentially some more Lethe come out because they can have Lethe as a pocket pick when you need to kill off high HP targets. But this is very interesting. I'm really glad that they changed the imprint concentration from effectiveness to health, because effectiveness is arguably one of the most useless self-imprints on any character in the game. I think everybody would agree with me. So building your Lethe now with 31% extra and an additional 10% from S2 is massive. And now she's going to have ignore ER with any targets with max health lower than the caster's max health. So if you have an artifact like Sweet Miracle, if you have an artifact like Prayer of Solitude, that's going to be really impactful because, again, you get that extra 10% on top of that. And then you get 21% from Imprint concentration and then 10% from S2. So you're looking at basically like 41% extra HP in total. And that's excluding any potential HP release imprints you have on your team. So very interesting to see how Lethe's going to perform. Now, Birgitta, I think this is the most useless change of all time. Basically, they're granting swift attack and increasing combat readiness by 50%. Nobody asked for this. I think Birgitta, this is the completely wrong direction that they're going in for Birgitta. This is not what she needs. She needs, a rework, maybe a sign change or something if you want to do this direction. But if you're wondering what this benefits, I would say like maybe Ruiza. Right, because Ruiza gets 50% combat readiness on S3. If you can apply the block, you can spread the block with the S2. So Birgitta may be getting buffed to pair better with the Ruiza. But, if you get Ruiza and Birgitta in your team and they don't slam freaking Renac into you or something that outspeeds you, I don't know. You probably could have picked any other unit and you probably still would have won. Just for the record, okay? Now, Zeno! I can't believe it. It's 2026. It is February 27, 2026. Zeno got a buff. Now, the most important thing that you want to pay attention to is that he has a passive that decreases the enemy's evasion by 50%, which means Satsuka with Lethal Whisper and her passive now has 0% evasion. If you draft Zeno into a Harsetti matchup where maybe there's a new kid Aiden, 0 evasion. Fire Flan, that evasion also goes down by 50%. If she has no focus, that is going to literally be 0% evasion. So this is a very interesting change. I'm really pleased to see that Smilegate's kind of leaning into a direction where they want to have countermeasures in place to address this issue of Satsuka. Now, I think in the higher ranks, it's not that prevalent. Yeah, there's sometimes you lose to Satsuka 1v4, but at least now there's countermeasures in place like Zeno to just have the passive on the field is enough, right? Now, the S3 is interesting because you inflict Rupture and also it cannot be buffed for 2 turns. And he gets Rage, which is a bit weird. Like, I don't know. Like, are they trying to have Zeno paired with Lethe to apply Frostbite? Or like Ran Cleave to apply Frostbite? Like, I don't know. Like, Frostbite is still kind of a niche debuff, I would say. Outside of Ran, you don't really see that debuff come out too often. But maybe we'll see Zeno get picked up as a potential countermeasure when people go into an evasion-heavy comp with Satsuka. Maybe. But I would say Zeno is going to be really good for Guild War because if you ever see like a Satsuka defense, I mean, that shit's just gone, right? Any evasion defense in Guild War just gets hard countered by Zeno. And yeah, you could say maybe you can, trap the Zeno in your Guild War defense. But that is also one thing I want to point out, right? Is you're going to be able to bring this and not have that RNG lose condition when setting up in a Guild War attack. So I think this is overall a really positive change from Smilegate. So overall, very good. Now, Vildred. I cannot believe they buffed Vildred. Like, I don't get it. I actually don't get it. So let's break this down. After an ally attacks, when the enemy's health is 50% or less, grants increased attack to the caster for 2 turns, self-attack buff, activates Dancing Blade, which is his S2, by the way, where he fucking sweeps, okay? After he uses the S2, he increases combat readiness of the caster by 20%. And also damage is dealt increases proportional to the caster's speed. So one way that I could tell you is how you can make this work is, for example, if you have Zeo and Triple Torrent, right? You proc them to the 50% or lower, instantly you activate Vildred, and then boom, he's an imprint, and then he's bridging himself. So now he's a bridge and a DPS, which just makes it even better. And obviously, if you go like Renac S2, S3, same concept, right? You're going to be able to do enough damage to proc Vildred, activate, and then sweep, right? So Vildred is going to be really strong as a speed imprint. Arguably, probably the best speed imprint in the game. Outside of the fact that if you need a 14, right, then he's going to be the best, right? His EE is going to be changed where he can potentially get 20 to 25% instead for the combat readiness increase from Dancing Blade. But the one that's really, really interesting is increased critical hit damage to the caster for 2 turns. So not only does he self-attack buff, he self-crit damage buffs. So that's going to be a lot of damage, right? That's going to be a lot of damage. If you can build your Vildred to bridge with a 20%, you don't need that extra 5%. Just cover the extra 5% with the gear, get the critical hit damage buff, and then boom, right, headshot. It's going to be really, really powerful for that. Arowell. Okay, Unbound Knight Arowell is going to be getting a buff. S1 now gives 20% combat readiness gain, and she gives increased defense for the whole team. But the most important thing I want to point out is she gets a ER free stat scaling according to the max HP. So look at a unit like ML Aria, where she has 6.5% scaling to her HP. So basically, like every 10,000 HP, Aria gets 65 effect resistance for free, right? I think that's correct. Someone might want to fact check me on that. But if I remember correctly, that's how that works. So we're going to have to see how the scaling actually works for Arowell, but they're basically giving a bunch of free ER to Unbound Knight Arowell, which is really, really massive. And for those of you that are watching this video, maybe you're not familiar with the Arowell meta. The Arowell meta was really, really prevalent during the Laya meta because she was a really good mitigation option for Escort with Adamant Shield, which is basically 30% damage transfer with 16% damage reduction. Now, that passive and barrier is not only to light elements, it's now all allies gets the barrier at the start. That means Unbound Knight Arowell gets a free prot set, a bunch of free ER, more CR gain on S1. So if you build her on a counter set, you get free CR. I mean, that's just crazy, you know? I mean, that is crazy. I think that's going to be... We're going to see Arowell come back into the meta 100%. 100%. Okay? Now, you might be thinking, if you're watching this video, you're at this point of the video, you're like, Vic, why? There's Carmen, there's Ilanav. Why would that be the best mitigation knight? We'll get to that in a second, okay? Roozid, nobody really cares. Like, I'm going to be completely honest. He gets an extra turn, CR push. No one's picking Roozid, right? I mean, keep that shit hidden. We're only going to be using this to farm points in Guild War Tournament. That's it. Sorry. With all due respect, this is not going to be seeing any play in RTA or Arena or Guild War unless it's at the tournament, okay? Now, let's look at the artifact. Assassin's Pledge, as I mentioned, after using an attack that targets all enemies, grants 10 souls and has a 50 to 100% chance to inflict burn for 1 turn. So, the 10 soul gain, you might think is kind of weird, but this is going to benefit Robin, because Robin actually got a buff on her on her skills, right, from the very start of the video, which is around here. Her soul burn is going to be going from 20 down to 10. So Assassin's Pledge is going to be her best in slot artifact now, without a doubt, right? So they mainly changed it just so it pairs a little bit better with Robin, but I would say most of us RTA players that have Assassin's Pledge on a unit like Westwind, Execution, or Shuri, this is a little bit of a nerf because you don't get the free base effectiveness now, which kind of sucks. But overall, I think this is going to make Robin more playable when you play units that grant the swift attack, like Aim It, right? I think KG is probably very happy about this. Now, Tyrant's Descent, I don't really know who will use this, but they're basically increasing the damage from up to 24 to 32, and the original was 18 to 24. I don't think it's going to see much play in actual RTA outside of maybe some cheese comp, because there isn't really any warriors that can ramp up to this stage in the game. But yeah, maybe PvE, maybe a Kane change. Maybe this is hinting at the next Rift season. I don't know. But overall, I don't really know what this changed for. This might just be a PvE change overall. Now, effect balance adjustments. Critical hit damage goes from 50 to 70%. So that obviously is going to help Vildred a lot. It ramps his damage even crazier. Escort goes from 30 to 40% damage share, because I was yapping about how Arowell is one of the best mitigation knights. People think I'm crazy. Escort, 30 goes up to 40. So you have a 40% damage share, and you have a 16% damage reduction from Adamant Shield. I mean, that is a lot of mitigation, man. And you get a free prot set. That's a lot. So this is definitely a buff strictly to Unbound Knight Arowell. But another way you can look at this is Payra in Lunatic mode is going to be even more impactful for E7 Masters, right? Because Payra is one of the strongest openers when you get to that stage like 2, 3, 4, 5, game 2, 3, 4, 5 in Lunatic mode for E7 Masters and E7 World Cup. Payra with the Escort having 40% damage share is going to be the difference of whether your DPS is going to live or die. So any unit that has Escort is going to directly be impacted with this change overall. Bleed, damage increased. Burn, damage increased. We have to see the numbers. We have to test it and see how much of an increase it actually is. but at least they're increasing the damage, which is, very much so appreciated. Thank you, Smilegate. Curse, indirect buff to Melissa. Obviously exclamation mark Melissa in my chat. I hate Melissa. If you know why I hate Melissa, then you're a real one. But we don't talk about Melissa. We don't talk about Curse. So fuck this debuff. Memory imprint balance adjustments, another big one. So all of the attack, defense percent, self imprints is going to be going from 18% up to 21%. So just a minor bump. And that goes down from triple S all the way down to B. And critical hit chance, one of the biggest changes in the patch, 16.8 goes to 18%. So any of those units that you have that you're building like 99.8 crit, it's no longer going to be a problem, right? It's just straight up 18%. So that is very much so appreciated. Thank you, Smilegate. Effectiveness and effect resistance will remain unchanged at 27 at max, but the lower stat thresholds are going to be rounded up, so that's very good as well. Dual attack chance goes from 6% to 12%. I think this more so is for PvE, right? For PvE, this is going to be a nice change. I don't see this really impacting RTA, so mainly just like a PvE change, which is nice because it'll make hitting like the Trial of Constellation or like the Shadow Company stuff for Expedition and stuff make it easier in some way, but depending at the stage of the game that you're in. And obviously, if you want to see all the charts, all this chart, this balance patch, all this information will be linked in the description or in the pinned comment, so you can read it yourself. I won't go over all of these numbers because it's just 4 and 3 stars. It's kind of whatever. But overall, I think there's just really amazing changes that Smilegate are doing, and I'm really glad that they're actually taking the feedback to, make the game better. If anyway, I want to say if you enjoy the update, please go let them know. They read the Stowe forums. Please tell them, hey, you did a great job. We love the patch. I already did that, right? I love Epic 7 is the best balance patch update we could ever ask for. Finally. Okay, so I'm really happy, but let them know, man. So W Smilegate, W Epic 7, we're Naughty OS 7 on top. Anyway, video is long enough. Thank you for watching. I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care. Bye.